The Garden of Eden. The name itself breathes paradise. A world without pain, without shame, without death. It is the foundational story for billions, the genesis of humanity, whispered in scriptures and painted on the ceilings of cathedrals. The story is simple, elegant, and known to all. In the beginning, God sculpted the first man, Adam, from the dust of the earth. But seeing his loneliness in this perfect world, God caused a deep sleep to fall upon him, took one of his ribs, and from it fashioned a companion, Eve, the mother of all living. Adam and Eve, the first couple, the perfect pair in a perfect world. Theirs is the only story of humanity's dawn. Or is it? What if I told you that hidden within the very same ancient texts, buried in plain sight, are clues to a different beginning? A story that has been scrubbed from the sermons, erased from the Sunday school lessons, and deemed too dangerous for the faithful. A story of another woman, a woman who was not born from Adam's rib, but sculpted from the same earth, at the same time, his equal in every way. A woman who looked Adam in the eye and refused to submit. A woman who, when faced with a choice between paradise in chains or freedom in exile, chose to fly.
To find this suppressed story, we don't need to venture into forbidden texts just yet. We need only to look closer at the book that started it all, Genesis. Most people, even those deeply familiar with the Bible, are unaware that it presents not one, but two distinct and curiously contradictory accounts of humanity's creation. This isn't a minor detail, it's a profound narrative fracture, a clue that something is missing. Let's travel back to the very first chapter, Genesis, chapter 1. This is the grand cosmic account of creation. God speaks and worlds are formed. Light, sky, earth, stars. It's a symphony of divine command over 7 days. And on the 6th day, we get this, Genesis 27:1. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. Pay close attention to the language. It's plural. Them, male and female, created together at the same time in God's image. There is no hierarchy here, no sequence. It's a simultaneous, equal creation. A man and a woman born of the same divine breath as twins of creation. But then we turn the page. We enter Genesis chapter 2. The narrative style shifts dramatically. It's no longer a grand cosmic overview. It becomes an intimate earthly story. And the creation of humanity is told again. But this time, it's completely different. In this second account, God forms Adam from the dust first. He places him in the Garden of Eden alone. God then says, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." What follows is a procession of animals brought before Adam for him to name, but none are a suitable partner. Only then, after this solitary period, does the famous event occur. So the Lord God caused the man to fall into a deep sleep. And while he was sleeping, he took one of the man's ribs and then closed up the place with flesh. Then the Lord God made a woman from the rib he had taken out of the man, and he brought her to him. This is the story of Eve, a sequential creation. Man first, woman second. A woman made from the man, for the man, as a helper. Do you see the problem? These are not two tellings of the same event. They are two fundamentally different origin stories. Genesis 1, a man and a woman created simultaneously as equals. Genesis 2, a man created first and a woman created later from his body to be his companion. For centuries, theologians have worked to harmonize these two accounts, suggesting they are simply different perspectives. But ancient Jewish scholars, mystics, and rabbis saw something else. They asked a radical question. What if these aren't two versions of one story, but two stories about two different women? What if the unnamed woman in Genesis 1, created as Adam's equal, was not Eve? What if she was the first? And what if her story was so rebellious, so challenging to the established order, that it had to be written over, replaced by the more compliant tale of a woman born from a rib? This textual anomaly is the doorway. It's the loose thread that, when pulled, unravels a hidden history. To find out what happened to this first woman, we must leave the canonical Bible and venture into the mystical and folkloric texts of Judaism, where her story was preserved. We must go in search of Lilith. The most detailed account of Lilith's life in Eden comes from a medieval Jewish text, an often satirical and controversial work known as the Alphabet of Ben Sira, written somewhere between 700 and 1000 AD. While not considered sacred scripture, it compiled ancient oral traditions and rabbinic lore that had been circulating for centuries. It's here that the puzzle pieces of Genesis 1 and 2 are finally put together. The text affirms the contradiction we just explored. It states that God, seeing Adam alone, decided to create a woman for him, just as he had created Adam. He created a woman for him, also from the earth, and called her Lilith. Adam and Lilith immediately began to fight. From the very beginning, there was conflict. Why? The text is shockingly specific. She said, "I will not lie below," and he said, "I will not lie below, but above, for you are fit to be in the bottom position, while I am to be in the superior one." Lilith responded, "We are equal to each other, inasmuch as we were both created from the earth." This was not an argument about chores or naming animals. This was a primal struggle for power and equality, encapsulated in the most intimate of acts. Lilith's argument was simple and, to her, irrefutable. We are equal. We were both created from the earth. She saw no reason for subservience. She was not an afterthought, not an accessory made from a spare part. She was his equal. Adam, representing the nascent patriarchal order, could not accept this. He saw a divinely ordained hierarchy. He was meant to be superior. Their conflict reached an impasse. They could not agree, and neither would yield. But Lilith possessed a power Adam did not, a forbidden knowledge. The narrative continues, seeing that Adam would only try to overpower her by force. Lilith did the unthinkable. When Lilith saw this, she uttered the ineffable name of God and flew away into the air. The ineffable name, the Tetragrammaton, YHWH, the secret name of God, which was said to hold immense power. A name so holy it was rarely, if ever, spoken aloud. To utter it was to tap into the raw power of creation itself. By speaking this name, Lilith broke the physical laws of Eden. She severed her connection to Adam, to the garden, and in an act of ultimate defiance, she grew wings and flew away. She didn't wait to be cast out. She didn't plead for a second chance. She left. She chose exile over subjugation. She abandoned paradise for freedom. Adam was left standing alone, stunned and betrayed, his perfect world shattered, not by a serpent or a forbidden fruit, but by a woman who refused to be less than he was.
Adam, left alone in the garden, immediately turned to his creator. He stood before the sovereign of the universe and complained, "The woman you gave me has run away." The divine response was swift. According to the Alphabet of Ben Sira, God dispatched 3 angels to retrieve the runaway. Their names were Senoi, Sansenoi, and Samangaloth. Their mission was clear: find Lilith and command her to return to Eden. If she refused, she would face a terrible punishment. The angels tracked her across the world and finally found her at the edge of the Red Sea, a place already steeped in myth and associated with chaotic, churning waters and demonic forces. It was here, in this wild, untamed place, that the confrontation took place. The angels delivered God's ultimatum: "Return to Adam at once, or we will drown you in the sea." But Lilith, who had abandoned paradise itself, was not about to be intimidated. She looked at the divine messengers and gave her resolute answer.
"Leave me be. I was created only to cause sickness to infants. If the infant is male, I have dominion over him for 8 days after his birth, and if female, for 20 days. In her exile, Lilith had undergone a transformation. She was no longer just the first woman. She had embraced a new, darker identity. She had allied herself with the demonic, becoming a succubus, a stealer of newborns, a terror in the night. This was her revenge on the world of Adam and the children he would have with another, more compliant wife. The angels were horrified, but pressed on, repeating God's second threat. If she refused to return, 100 of her own children, demonic offspring she had begun to bear in her exile, would die every single day. It was a monstrous punishment, designed to break her spirit. And it did, but not in the way they expected. Lilith was shaken by the decree, but her will was not broken. She would not return to Eden. Instead, she proposed a pact, a terrible bargain struck between heaven and the abyss.
She swore an oath to the 3 angels by the name of the living God himself. "Whenever I see you, or your names, or your forms in an amulet, I will have no power over that infant." She agreed to this one limitation on her terrifying new role. The names of the 3 angels, Senoi, Sansenoi, and Samangaloth, would become a protective ward. For centuries, Jewish communities would place amulets bearing these names in the rooms of newborns, a practice born directly from this ancient legend. She accepted the punishment that 100 of her children would die daily, but she would remain free. The angels had no choice but to accept the pact. They returned to heaven, their mission a failure. Lilith was not coming back, and God, seeing that the first experiment had ended in rebellion and exile, proceeded to plan B. He returned to the still lonely Adam, caused him to fall into a deep sleep, and this time, he did not create an equal from the dust. He created a derivative, a companion from Adam's own rib. He created
Eve. Eve, who would be called Mother of all living, was in fact humanity's second mother. Her story was not the beginning, it was a replacement, a correction designed to ensure the rebellion of the first woman would never happen again. The memory of Lilith was meant to fade, to become a whisper, a terrifying campfire story told to frighten children and warn women who dared to be too independent. He reverts to an academic tone, like a historian connecting the dots. When quoting Isaiah, his voice becomes haunting and somber. The story of Lilith in the Alphabet of Ben Sira did not emerge from a vacuum. The rabbis and scholars who wrote it were drawing upon a figure whose roots stretch back thousands of years before Judaism, into the heart of ancient Mesopotamia. The name Lilith itself is not originally Hebrew. It's believed to derive from a class of Mesopotamian spirits known as Lili or Lilitu. Wind spirits, night demons, spectral beings that haunted the desolate places of the world. Ancient Sumerian, Akkadian, Assyrian, and Babylonian cultures were terrified of these beings. One of the earliest known mentions appears in a Sumerian king list from around 2400 BC. She is even found in the Epic of Gilgamesh, where a Lilitu makes her home in the trunk of a sacred tree before being driven away by the hero. These ancient demons were often associated with storms, disease, and most specifically, danger to mothers and infants. The demoness Lamashtu, for instance, was a particularly feared figure in Mesopotamia. Texts describe her as a monstrous hybrid with the head of a lioness and the body of a woman, who would slip into the homes of pregnant women and snatch their newborns from the cradle. People would use incantations and wear amulets to ward her off, a practice eerily similar to the amulets used against Lilith. He reverts to an academic tone, like a historian connecting the dots. When quoting Isaiah, his voice becomes haunting and haunted. When the Jewish people were exiled in Babylon in the 6th century BC, they were immersed in this culture. It is almost certain that the stories of the Lilitu and Lamashtu merged with their own folklore. The figure of Lilith became a perfect vessel for these ancient fears. She was a Hebrew name for a Mesopotamian terror. We even see a fleeting, ghostly appearance of her in the canonical Bible itself. In the book of Isaiah, chapter 34, the prophet describes the utter desolation that will befall the land of Edom after God's judgment. He paints a picture of a wasteland inhabited only by wild beasts and supernatural creatures. He reverts to an academic tone, like a historian connecting the dots. When quoting Isaiah, his voice becomes haunting and horned. And wild desert creatures shall meet with hyenas. The wild goat shall cry to its fellow. Indeed, there the night creature shall settle and find for herself a place of rest. In most English translations, the term is rendered as night creature, night monster, or sometimes screech owl. But in the original Hebrew text, the word used is Lilith. It is the only time her name appears in the entire Old Testament. Here, she is not Adam's wife. She is a desolate spirit, finding a home among the ruins and the thorns, a phantom of the wilderness. This single verse is a fossil preserved in stone, a trace memory of a much older, more widespread myth. Over centuries, these threads, the rebellious first wife from Genesis, the Mesopotamian baby snatcher, the desolate night spirit from Isaiah, were woven together. She became the ultimate outsider. In the Talmud and the Zohar, the foundational text of Jewish mysticism or Kabbalah, she is further developed. She becomes the queen of the demons, the mate of Samael, often identified with Satan, and a seductive succubus who preys on men in their sleep, stealing their seed to create her demonic children. Her story became a powerful cautionary tale. This is what happens to a woman who defies her husband. This is what happens to a woman who abandons her divine purpose. She becomes a monster. Her independence is twisted into destructiveness, her equality into demonic pride, her freedom into a cursed existence in the wilderness. The patriarchy of ancient religion needed a villain to justify its structure, and the memory of a rebellious woman was the perfect candidate.
For nearly 2,000 years, Lilith remained a figure of the shadows, a demon, a seductress, a terror. Her story was a tool of control, a warning against female autonomy. But in the modern era, something remarkable happened. The villain began to transform into a hero. The rediscovery of Lilith began with artists and poets of the 19th century Romantic movement. They saw in her not a monster, but a tragic, powerful, and misunderstood figure. Dante Gabriel Rossetti's famous painting, Lady Lilith, depicts her not as a haggard demon, but as an icon of languid, unapologetic beauty and self-possession. She became a symbol of dangerous, untamable female sexuality, a stark contrast to the pious, domestic ideal of the Victorian angel in the house. But it was the rise of second-wave feminism in the 1960s and 70s that truly resurrected Lilith and placed her on a new throne. Feminist theologians and thinkers, looking back at religious texts, saw the story of Eden through a new lens. They saw how the narrative had been shaped to enforce patriarchal control. Eve, created from Adam's rib to be his helper, represented the ideal woman in this system, passive, obedient, and derivative. Her one act of initiative, eating the fruit, led to the fall of all humanity. In Lilith, they found the antithesis. A woman who was not derivative, but original. A woman who demanded equality, not as a gift, but as her birthright. A woman whose sin was not disobedience to God, but a refusal to submit to a man. Suddenly, her flight from Eden was not an act of demonic rebellion, but an act of heroic self-liberation. Her choice of the wilderness over a gilded cage became a powerful metaphor. The Jewish feminist magazine, Lilith, was founded in 1976, taking her name as a banner of fierce, independent womanhood. The massively popular music festival of the 1990s, Lilith Fair, celebrated female artists and creativity, further cementing her place as a cultural icon. Today, Lilith is more prominent than ever. In neo-pagan and Wiccan traditions, she is often worshipped as a dark goddess, a symbol of the sacred feminine in its wildest, most untamed form. She represents sexual freedom, instinct, and the power that lies in embracing one's shadow. She has become a powerful archetype. She is the woman who will not be silenced, the woman who walks out of a relationship that demands she be smaller than she is, the woman who reclaims her story, her body, and her power. The very traits that once made her a demon, her independence, her intelligence, her refusal to be subservient, are the very traits that now make her a hero. Her journey from the dust of Eden to the darkness of the abyss, and finally, to the light of modern empowerment, is a testament to the power of stories and to how the meaning of a myth can be reclaimed and rewritten by those it was once meant to suppress. So, what is the hidden truth of the Garden of Eden? Is it that a woman named Lilith literally existed and flew away from paradise? Perhaps. But the deeper truth is not about historical fact. It's about what the existence of her story reveals. The legend of Lilith is a scar on the official narrative.
It's the memory of a story that was deemed too inconvenient, too radical, too threatening to be told. It exposes the seams in the official account, revealing that our foundational myths were not handed down from heaven as monolithic truths, but were forged in the fires of cultural conflict, debate, and suppression. The story of Adam versus Lilith is the story of two competing visions of womanhood, and by extension, humanity. One vision celebrates equality, independence, and the courage to question authority. The other values hierarchy, obedience, and harmony within a predefined structure. For millennia, the second vision won. Its victory was so complete that the first was almost entirely forgotten, relegated to the realm of demons and dark magic. The hidden truth is that Eden was not a simple paradise with a simple story. It was a place of conflict, of negotiation, of a fundamental debate about power that continues to this day. Adam's conflict with Lilith, his demand for superiority versus her insistence on equality, is a drama that has been replayed in countless relationships, societies, and institutions throughout human history. Lilith's story forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. Who gets to write our sacred stories? Whose voices are included and whose are silenced? And what parts of ourselves, our wildness, our independence, our desire for equality, have we been taught to exile, to label as monstrous? Maybe the real Garden of Eden wasn't a physical place we were cast out of. Maybe it's a state of wholeness we are trying to return to. A state where the two halves of our origin story, the rebellious and the compliant, the wild and the domesticated, the Lilith and the Eve within all of us, can finally be integrated. The truth that was hidden is not just about a woman, it's about a choice. The choice between the comfortable paradise of accepted narratives and the wild, uncertain, but ultimately liberating wilderness of questioning everything. Which will you choose?